Hello friends, my name is Mohammad Imran. I'm a second MBBS student. So we are going to study about peptic ulcer disease today. So we would cover peptic ulcer disease from every second year subject, that is pathology, microbiology, mainly H. pylori bacteria, and pharmacology. Starting with the pathology portion, what is peptic ulcer disease? It is a chronic mucosal ulceration defect that penetrates the muscularis mucosa layer of the stomach. It can affect duodenum. If it affects duodenum, then duodenal ulcer is formed. If it affects stomach, then gastric ulcer is formed. It is mainly a complication of chronic gastritis and most oftenly associated with H. pylori bacteria, NSAID ingestion, or cigarette smoking. Now coming to the pathogenesis part of peptic ulcer disease. In a normal stomach, we have damaging forces. We have damaging forces and defensive forces. In damaging forces is because of gastric acidity. The parietal cell secretes HCl and peptic enzymes. And defensive forces is of three types. We have three defenses. First one, from the pre-epithelial layer, surface mucus secretion and bicarbonate secretion. It neutralizes the excess acid secreted by the parietal cells. And the second one is epithelial. It has the regenerative capacity, which is damaged by the acid, and prostaglandin. And subepithelial, we have mucosal blood flow. Mucosal blood flow, it provides bicarbonates, which neutralizes the acid generated by parietal cells. And the second one is adequate supply of nutrients and oxygen to the cells and removes the toxic metabolites, byproducts, and leukocytes. Now, in a patient who presents with peptic ulcer disease, there is an imbalance between mucosal defensive forces and damaging forces. The damaging forces which directly damage the mucosa may be due to H. pylori infection, NSAIDs, cigarette smoking, alcohol, and hyperacidity. Hyperacidity may be due to of Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, and there may also be impaired defensive forces. The impaired defensive forces may be due to ischemia, shock, delayed gastric emptying, and some host factors. Now coming to the morphology portion. Gross, the site of peptic ulcer, as we have discussed earlier, may be duodenum and stomach. In duodenum, it usually affects the first part of duodenum, and in stomach, the lesser curvature of stomach. Proximal ulcers, the body of stomach, and distal ulcer is present in antrum and angulus of the stomach. It may also be present in gastric esophageal junction and anastomotic site. Anastomotic site, that too in patients who have undergone distal gastric resection and multiple ulcers. Number, they are usually solitary. The shape of gastric ulcer may be round to oval, and the most important one is punched out defect. It looks like a punched out defect, and the margins are usually in level with the surrounding mucosa. The most important one is the radiating folds of mucosa from ulcer. It gives a spoke wheel appearance. As we can see in this image, we can see a spoke wheel appearance, and the base is smooth and clean. Now coming to the microscopy portion of peptic ulcer disease, we have to remember Ashkenazi zones. There are 4 zones in this. The first one is the superficial necrotic zone. The second one is superficial exudative zone. In this, we can see fibrinopurulent exudates with neutrophilic inflammatory infiltrates, as we can see in this image clearly. And the third one is granulation tissue zone. It is infiltrated by mononuclear leukocytes. And the fourth one is zone of cicatrization. In this zone, we can see fibrous tissue or collagenous scar, as we can see in this image clearly. There are 4 zones. First one is necrotic zone, second one is superficial exudative zone, third one is granulation tissue zone, and fourth one is zone of cicatrization. Now coming to the difference between gastric ulcer and duodenal ulcers. In gastric ulcer, it is present along the lesser curvature, and duodenal ulcer, first part of duodenum, D1, and incidence, it is less common. Duodenal ulcer is more common. Age beyond 6 decade, male greater than female. Between 25 and 50 years, male greater than female, as same as in gastric ulcer. And association with H. pylori infection, it is less common. Strong association, and acid level is usually normal and high in duodenal ulcer. The clinical features: the relationship of pain to antacids. The relief of pain not consistent, we get a prompt relief pain. Relationship of pain to food: aggravates the pain, relieves the pain. Relieves the pain in duodenal ulcer. It increases the pain in gastric ulcer. Night pain not observed, common. and heartburn is also common in duodenal ulcer. And hematemesis or melena, hematemesis is more common in gastric ulcer and melena is more common in duodenal ulcer. Vomiting is common in gastric ulcer. Duodenal ulcer there is no vomiting, and weight loss is present in gastric ulcer, not in duodenal ulcer. Complication rarely undergoes malignant change, and no malignant change in duodenal ulcer, but there is some possibility of malignant change in gastric ulcer. Now coming to the clinical features. It is a chronic recurring lesions. The gastric ulcers and duodenal ulcers are chronic and recurring lesions, and age usually affects the young adults, and patient usually presents with epigastric pain, nausea, vomiting, bloating, belching, and weight loss. Weight loss is prominent in gastric ulcer, not in duodenal ulcer. The complications of gastric and duodenal ulcer: in gastric ulcer there is bleeding, perforation, pyloric obstruction, and it is rarely malignant. In duodenal ulcer, the complications are simple: bleeding and perforation. After completing the pathology portion of peptic ulcer disease, now we are going to start with the microbiology portion, that is Helicobacter pylori. Helicobacter pylori is a curved gram-negative bacilli. The pathogenesis of Helicobacter pylori infection, in this the mortality, it is highly motile bacteria, acid resistance because of these three characteristics. The first one is urease enzyme, second one is amidase and arginase, and third one is URE1 protein. These three characteristics which gives it acid resistance. And in urease enzyme, it produces abundant urease that catalyzes the urea hydrolysis to produce ammonia, which in turn buffers the gastric acid. And the second one is amidase and arginase. It contributes to the production of ammonia production, and URE1 protein, it regulates the passage of urea across the cell membrane into cytoplasm. Adhescence, it binds to mucosal epithelium, blood group, antigen binding adhescence, and adherence associated lipoprotein. Resistance to oxidative stress, Helicobacter pylori produces detoxifying enzyme that protect from the effects of oxygen derived free radicals. Helicobacter pylori induces pathological changes like it secretes vacuolating cytotoxin VAC-A and cytotoxin associated gene A, CAG-A and VAC-A. These two genes induces pathological changes. And the second one is molecular mimicry. The lipoprotein of H. pylori is identical to Lewis blood group antigen on gastric parietal cell. It leads to development of chronic active gastritis. Now coming to the clinical manifestations. Helicobacter pylori produces acute gastritis, enteral gastritis, pangastritis, peptic ulcer disease, and chronic atrophic gastritis. It also causes adenocarcinoma of stomach and non-Hodgkin gastric lymphoma. Laboratory diagnosis, we have to remember two things. First one is invasive test and second one is non-invasive test. In invasive test, we can do histopathology. In histopathology, there is Warthin starry silver staining. As we can see in this image, these black bacilli are Helicobacter pylori. Now coming to the microbiological methods, gram staining. We can see curved gram-negative bacilli with seagull shaped morphology. The culture media is Kiroff's media. It is also used for Campylobacter, and chocolate agar can also be used, and plates are incubated at 37 degree under microaerophilic conditions. Biochemical test we can memorize by OCU, O for oxidase, C for catalase, and U for urease. All three are positive. Non-invasive tests, we can do urea breath test. It is the most consistent and accurate test, sensitive, quick and simple, and it is used for monitoring of treatment. We can also do a stool antigen assay, that is coproantigen assay, for monitoring of treatment and for screening of children. We can also do an antibody detection by ELISA. It is used for screening before endoscopy and seroepidemiological study. As we have completed the pathology and microbiology portion of peptic ulcer disease, now we are going to start with the pharmacology portion, that is pharmacotherapy of peptic ulcer disease. The classification of drugs that is used in peptic ulcer disease, starting with the drugs that inhibit gastric acid secretion. The famous one, that is the proton pump inhibitor. The examples of PPIs are omeprazole, esomeprazole, pantoprazole, rabeprazole and lansoprazole. And the second one is H2 receptor antagonist like ranitidine, cimetidine, roxetidine, and nizatidine. Third one is anti-muscarinic agents like pirenzepine and telenzepine. These are not used nowadays. And the fourth one is prostaglandin analogs like misoprostol and enprostil. The second type of drug we can use in peptic ulcer diseases, ulcer protectives. Examples of these are sucralfate and bismuth subcitrate and bismuth subsalicylate. The third one is antacids. We can divide antacids into two categories. First one is non-systemic and second one is systemic. Example of non-systemic antacids are magnesium hydroxide, aluminium hydroxide, and calcium carbonate. Example of systemic antacids are sodium citrate and sodium bicarbonate. The fourth type of drug we can use in peptic ulcer disease is anti-H. pylori agents. We would study about this later. Starting with proton pump inhibitors. Proton pump inhibitors are prodrugs. The mechanism of action of proton pump inhibitor, it irreversibly inhibits the H plus K plus ATPase, that is the proton pumps. As PPIs are prodrugs, we need to activate the drug. So if we give by oral enteric coated capsule, as the PPIs are acid level, so we have to give by enteric coated capsule, and the enteric coated capsule dissolves in small intestine. We need alkaline medium for dissolving this enteric coated capsule. After that it enters the systemic circulation. Now it goes to the parietal cell. After the parietal cell, it goes into the canaliculi where acidic pH is required for it the active form of PPI, that is sulfonamide. The sulfonamide inhibits the proton pump. We have to take PPI 30 minutes before the food intake because of this. And pharmacokinetic, it has short half-life and long acting because it irreversibly inhibits the proton pump, and PPI inhibits both basal acid output, that is nocturnal acid secretion. It also inhibits meal stimulated acid output, that is maximal acid output. The drugs that are in PPI are omeprazole. Omeprazole is a most potent enzyme inhibitor. Pantoprazole is least potent enzyme inhibitor. Lansoprazole is the safest PPI in pregnancy, and rabeprazole is the fast acting and longest acting. Uses: peptic ulcer disease, as it is the DOC, drug of choice. Stress ulcer, NSAID induced ulcer, GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, and Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. It is also given for H. pylori infection, and Barrett's esophagus we have to give lifelong PPI. The side effects of PPI are nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, hypergastrinemia. It decreases the HCl in stomach. There is increased chances of pneumonia and pseudomembranous enterocolitis. And it also decreases the absorption of calcium, so it results in osteoporosis. In omeprazole, we have noticed there are side effects like gynecomastia and erectile dysfunction. Now coming to the second one, that is the H2 blockers. The examples of H2 blockers are cimetidine, ranitidine, nizatidine, famotidine. Mechanism of action is it inhibits the H2 receptor. As the PPI blocks both basal acid secretion and stimulated acid secretion, but here in H2 blocker, it mainly blocks the basal acid secretion more than the stimulated acid secretion. So it is drug of choice for prevention of aspiration pneumonia in post-operative patients. The uses are similar to PPIs. Now we are going to study the difference between cimetidine and ranitidine. Cimetidine can cross blood-brain barrier. This leads to CNS side effects, but ranitidine does not cross blood-brain barrier. There is no CNS side effects. And the cimetidine inhibits the androgen receptor. It also inhibits the metabolism of estradiol and increase the secretion of prolactin. And cimetidine is also a potent enzyme inhibitor. Ranitidine, there is no effect on androgen receptor and no effects like this. Like it inhibits the metabolism of estradiol and increases the secretion of prolactin, as in case of cimetidine. The side effects are GIT upset like nausea, vomiting, constipation. It also causes neurotoxicity like delirium and confusion. Mostly cimetidine, as it crosses the blood-brain barrier. It also causes pancytopenia. And in cimetidine, as it blocks the androgen receptor, we can see impotence in males. It also inhibits the estradiol metabolism. It increases the prolactin secretion. This leads to gynecomastia in males and galactorrhea in females. The third one is anti-muscarinic agents. Examples are pirenzepine and telenzepine. These drugs are not used nowadays. Moving on, the fourth one is prostaglandin analogs. The example of prostaglandin analogs are misoprostol and enprostel, PGE1, PGE2 and PGI2. It increases the release of mucus and bicarbonate secretion by increasing the mucosal blood flow. It also inhibits H plus K plus ATPase, that is proton pump. This leads to decreased acid production. Misoprostol is mainly given for NSAID induced ulcer. The side effects are abdominal pain and diarrhea. The ulcer protectives are sucralfate, but sucralfate has no H. pylori action. Sucralfate is basically aluminium salt of sulfated sucrose. The mechanism of action: when sucralfate comes in contact with HCl, it polymerizes to form a sticky layer, and this sticky layer covers the ulcer base, so that's why it is an ulcer protective. The side effects are hypophosphatemia and constipation. The second ulcer protective is colloidal bismuth subcitrate. It also binds to ulcer, as in case of ulcer protective like sucralfate, but it has anti-H. pylori action. It increases the mucus and it also increases the bicarbonate. The side effect is black discoloration of tongue and stool, as in we can see in this image. Now coming to the last topic, that is anti-H. pylori agents. We have a standard triple drug therapy and a standard quadruple drug therapy. In standard triple drug therapy, we can remember by LCA, lansoprazole, clarithromycin and amoxicillin. In standard quadruple drug therapy, we can remember it by MTBL, M for metronidazole, T for tetracycline, B for bismuth subcitrate and L for lansoprazole and omeprazole. Thank you for watching. Hope you like this video. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button for more videos related to medical field.